Okay, so today I'm going to show you guys basically all the animation tools that I know of that are worth knowing, I should say. So first of all, your most major tools are, these should be obvious to you, but you have your timeline here. You have your rangefinder here. You have your beginning of time and the beginning of your range text box. So I put 5 in there. That's not the beginning of time, but that's the beginning of the range that I currently want to look at. Also have the end of range and the end of time boxes. Okay, now just to add some emphasis, normally if you have simulations in your scene, this is going to begin, your beginning of time is going to be somewhere between -100 and -20, depending on what type of simulation you're doing. Because your simulation most likely is going to have to begin back here in the negatives and then carry on into the positives, so that you already have the simulation working when it's time to render. Okay, so then you can shift your time that you're seeing this way. You can increase the range that you're seeing by clicking on the boxes either into this handle. You can set the current frame that you're on in this box, sometimes useful. You can even put it on a frame that's not visible or within your range. I don't know why you do that, but you could. Then you have your go to beginning of time, go back 1 frame, go back 1 keyframe, go play backwards, play forwards, forward 1 key, forward 1 frame, and to the end of time. Okay, you also have your animation settings here. You can get to these also by going through the window, settings, preferences. I forget what it's at this way. Yeah, it's somewhere in here. Time slider. So it's under time slider. Okay, and then if you're running simulations, you want to make sure that this is on play every frame. If you're not running simulations, then you probably want this to be on real time. Okay. Now, I have the graph editor. I'm on the left side of the graph editor. It's going to have a list of the selected objects that have animation. So this object doesn't have any animation, so there's no attributes listed. It just has more sub-objects listed, so it has kind of an outliner sort of look to it, because it's showing you the hierarchy of objects in your scene. If you have an attribute that has a key, so if I were to key this scary mouse shape scary to scary, then I'll get a little dot in the graph editor. Okay, I'm on frame 100. You can see that here. You can move keyframes in the graph editor by selecting this key here, and then drag selecting the individual key or keys that you want to move, middle mouse click on them, and drag it around. Put it where you want. Okay. Now, you can also select a key and it will tell you its stats. The first value in the stat is 100, and in this case, this is always the frame, and this is the value at that frame, so 1. Now, let me choose a different attribute. I'm going to delete this key. Just press delete. Now I'm going to key the twist. I'm going to shrink my range down. "24 frames." Now to zoom in the graph editor, this is pretty handy. You can Alt right click and zoom like normal, but you can also, if I remember right, it's Alt Shift right click and you can zoom in just one axis. That's really handy when you're in the graph editor. If you do the same thing but drag up and down, then you'll zoom in and out. You'll shrink or grow your graph vertically. This is horizontal, and both of those again are Shift and Alt key with the right click. So that's really handy. So we know you can set your time in your rangefinder or your timeline here. Frames do not have to exist on the exact frame number, but when they are rendered, most likely they are going to be rendered at the exact, well, not most likely, they're going to be rendered at the exact frame value, not the key value. So to show you that, let me grab this twist attribute. I'm going to go to frame 1 and key it. So now I've got a red line here. I'm going to go to frame 10. Key it again. Now I've got a range right here of keys. Now if I hold down Shift while I click in my timeline, I can actually select a frame. It'll turn red, and then I can click in the middle of that selection and move that key where I want it to go. Okay, I can also, and this won't make much sense, but I can drag on either end of this and shrink or grow that key. Now let me put this back at 1. Now if I hold down Shift, I'm going to click and drag and select both of these, all the animation between 1 and 10 that is on this control that I have selected. It's important to note that the keys that you're seeing in your timeline are based off of your selection. So now that I have 2 keys selected, I can actually manipulate this and stretch it out. And now I have a key that's about, it's at 15.4. So there's my key that's not on the exact frame number. Why is this important? A lot of times, let's say you're doing a walk cycle and you want the character's foot to look like it's on the ground when it's supposed to be. Well, if you animate that and then the director says we need to speed up that walk a little bit, so you come in your timeline and you Shift, drag, select all your animation and you shrink it down to make it faster, right? Well, it becomes faster, and those keys that planted your character's foot on the ground, now they're somewhere half of a frame. And so when it renders, that foot may be just above the ground instead of actually being on the ground in the render. And now your character looks like he's floating, all because you tried to speed up your walk cycle. Okay, so that's important to note. That's going to happen when you're shifting stuff around. There's no way around. There is a way around it, but there's no way around. You always are going to have to speed stuff up and speed. I'm having trouble talking. You're always going to have to speed things up or slow them down based off of your own opinion at first, your animation director's opinion, and in the end, the director's opinion. Okay, so that's how to shift that stuff. You can also copy frames. So if you select a frame here, you can right click on the timeline and say cut or copy. You can go to frame 19 and paste it.